and strength. This properly resourced requirement will define the minimum force levels to accomplish the mission with an acceptable level of risk. This is an important and likely decisive period of this war. Afghans are frustrated and weary after 8 years without evidence of the progress they anticipated. Patience is understandably short, both in Afghanistan and in our own countries. Time matters. We must act now to reverse the negative trends and demonstrate progress. I do not underestimate the enormous challenges in executing this new strategy. However, we have a key advantage. The majority of Afghans do not want a return of the Taliban. During consultations with Afghan Defense Minister Wardak, W-A-R-D-A-K, I found some of his writings insightful. Quote, "Victory is within our grasp provided that we recommit ourselves based on lessons learned and provided that we fulfill the requirements needed to make success inevitable. I reject the myth advanced in the media that Afghanistan is a graveyard of empires and that the U.S. and NATO effort is destined to fail. Afghans have never seen you as occupiers, even though this has been the major focus of the enemy's propaganda campaign. Unlike the Russians, who imposed the government with an alien ideology, you enable us to write a democratic constitution and choose our own government. Unlike the Russians, who destroyed our country, you came to rebuild." End of quote. Given that this conflict and country are his to win, not mine, Minister Wardak's assessment was part of my calculus. While the situation is serious, success is still achievable. This starts with redefining both the fight itself and what we need for the fight. It is then sustained through a fundamentally new way of doing business. Finally, it will be realized when our new operational culture connects with the powerful will of the Afghan people. The situation in Afghanistan is serious. The mission is achievable, but success demands a fundamentally new approach, one that is properly resourced and supported by better unity of effort. Important progress has been made, yet many indicators suggest the overall situation is deteriorating despite considerable effort by ISAF. The threat has grown steadily, but subtly, and unchecked by common straight counteraction. Its severity now surpasses the capabilities of the current strategy. We cannot succeed simply by trying harder. ISAF must now adopt a fundamentally new approach. The entire culture, how ISAF understands the environment and defines the fight, how it interacts with the Afghan people and government, and how it operates both on the ground and within the coalition, must change profoundly. As announced by President Obama in his March 27, 2009 speech outlining the new U.S. strategy for Afghanistan and Pakistan, the mission in Afghanistan has been historically under-resourced, resulting in a culture of poverty that has plagued ISAF's effort to date. ISAF requires a properly resourced force and capability level to correct this deficiency. Success is not ensured by additional forces alone, but continued under-resourcing will likely cause failure. Nonetheless, it must be made clear, new resources are not the crux. To succeed, ISAF requires a new approach with a significant magnitude of change. In addition to a proper level of resourcing, ISAF must restore confidence in the near term through renewed commitment, intellectual energy, and visible progress. This assessment prescribes two fundamental changes. First, ISAF must improve execution and the understanding of the basics of COIN, counterinsurgency. Those essential elements common to any counterinsurgency strategy. Second, ISAF requires a new strategy to counter a growing threat. Both of these reforms are required to reverse the negative trends in Afghanistan and achieve success. ISAF is not adequately executing the basics of counterinsurgency warfare. In particular, there are two fundamental elements where ISAF must improve. One, change the operational culture of ISAF to focus on protecting the Afghan people, understanding their environment, and building relationships with them. And two, transform ISAF process to be more operationally efficient and effective, creating more coherent unity of command within ISAF and fostering a stronger unity of effort across the international community. Coalition herefore refers to ISAF's coalition of troop and resources contributing nations. Simultaneous to improving on the basic principles, ISAF must also adopt a profoundly new strategy with four fundamental pillars. Develop a significantly more effective and larger ANSF with a radically expanded coalition force partnering at every echelon. Prioritize responsive and accountable governance that the Afghan people find acceptable, to be on par with and integral to delivering security. Gain initiative and reverse the insurgency's momentum as the first imperative in a series of temporal stages. And prioritize available resources to those critical areas where the population is most threatened. There is nothing new about the principles of counterinsurgency and organizational efficiency. Rather, they represent profoundly renewed attention to pursuing the basic tenet of protecting the population specifically adapted for this diverse force and unique conflict, and target to work through the most challenging obstacles that have hindered previous efforts. ISAF's new strategy is consistent with the NATO Comprehensive Strategic Political Military Plan and supports implementation of President Obama's strategy to disrupt, dismantle, and eventually defeat al-Qaeda and prevent their return to Afghanistan. ISAF's new approach will be nested within an integrated and properly resourced civilian military counterinsurgency strategy. This will be enormously difficult. To execute this strategy, ISAF must use existing assets in innovative and unconventional ways, but ISAF will also require additional resources, forces, and possibly even new authorities. All steps are imperative, and time is of essence. Patience will see the mission through, but to have that chance, real progress must be demonstrated in the near future. Describing the mission. ISAF's mission statement is: ISAF, in support of GIROA, conducts operations in Afghanistan to reduce the capability and will of the insurgency, support the growth and capacity and capability of the Afghan National Security Forces, ANSF, and facilitate improvements in governance and socio-economic development in order to provide a secure environment for sustainable stability that is observable to the population. Accomplishing this mission requires defeating the insurgency, which this paper defines as a coalition where the insurgency no longer threatens the viability of the state. GIROA must sufficiently control its territory to support regional stability and prevent its use for international terrorism. Accomplishing this mission also requires a better understanding of the nature of the conflict, a change in basic operational culture, concepts, and tactics, and a corresponding change in strategy. NATO source documents have been consulted, and a new strategy remains consistent with the NATO comprehensive approach. Existing UN mandates will continue to provide a framework for ISAF's effort. International military forces, their civilian counterparts, and international organizations are a key component of ISAF's shared mission to support the people of Afghanistan. It is critical that ISAF preserve, bolster, and help focus this diverse partnership. Nature of the conflict. While not a war in the conventional sense, the conflict in Afghanistan demands a similar focus and an equal level of effort, and the consequences of failure are just as grave. The fight also demands an improved and evolved level of understanding. The conflict in Afghanistan is often described as a war of ideas and perceptions. This is true and demands important considerations. However, perceptions are generally derived from actions and real conditions, for example, by the provision or lack of security, governance, and economic opportunity. Thus, the key of changing perceptions is to change the fundamental underlying truths. To be effective, the counterinsurgent cannot risk credibility by substituting the situation they desire for reality. Redefining the fight. The conflict in Afghanistan can be viewed as a set of related insurgencies, each of which is a complex system with multiple actors and a vast set of interconnecting relationships among those actors. The most important implication of this view is that no element of the conflict can be viewed in isolation. A change anywhere will affect everything else. This view implies that the system must be understood holistically, and while such understanding is not predictive, it will help to recognize general causal relationships. The new strategy redefines the nature of the fight. It is not a cyclical kinetic campaign based on a set of fighting season, rather it is a continuous year-long effort to help GIROA win the support of the people and counter insurgent coercion and intimidation. There are 5 principal actors in this conflict: the Afghan population, GIROA, ISAF, the insurgency, and the external players. It is important to begin with an understanding of each of these actors, starting with the most important, the people. The people of Afghanistan represent many things in this conflict: an audience, an actor, and a source of leverage. But above all, they are the objective. The population can also be a source of strength and intelligence and provide resistance to the insurgency. Alternatively, they can often change sides and provide tactic or real support to the insurgents. Communities make deliberate choices to resist, support, or allow insurgent influence. The reasons for these choices must be better understood. GIROA and ISAF have both failed to focus on this objective. The weakness of state institutions, malign actions of power brokers, widespread corruption and abuse of power by various officials, and ISAF's own errors have given Afghans little reason to support